Alrighty, here we are, my second to last mock draft of 2023. Whether this is your first one, you've watched all of them, or you might be catching up after a couple of months off, thank you so much for all your support throughout this mock drafting process. I've really enjoyed deep diving into the draft in this season, and I can't wait to do more of it in 2024, but more about that next time, guys. Let's focus on the here and the now. I have a top 40 mock draft for you that I am really proud of, and I hope you enjoy it. So, it feels a little bit like Christmas Eve, because the draft is around the corner, and I'm not that big of a Christmas person, but hopefully this is a gift to you. My top 40 mock draft in October. Pick 1, they're the Eagles, the West Coast Eagles, and they're here to take pick 1. Harley Reid is the man. There's nothing more about Harley that I can say that hasn't already been said. A genuine freak, will add instant star power to the Eagles that they don't really have in that new age midfield just yet, but he'll be able to grow with Jinby, Hewitt, Noah Long, maybe rotating through that midfield mix a little bit. He's the answer. Don't trade the pick unless it's for all 5 of North Melbourne's first round picks and their next year's one. Oh, he's not worth 6 first round draft picks. That's fine. Take the pick, give him the number 9 jersey, and you're away. It's not as if West Coast need any help with crowd numbers or anything, but if you want to get a rebuilding club up and about, this is what you do. And pick 2, let's go to Jed Walter, Gold Coast. They're going to match the bid. It's going to be here. North would be stupid not to do it here. Gold Coast should match it here. So a lot of their picks in the 20s now go away after we hit about pick, I think it is about pick 32-ish. All the picks come in, so don't stress that there's about 28 picks in this first round. It's just the way it's going to go with the academy kids and with the father-sons. So, I mean, deal with it, don't deal with it. I don't really know what to tell you guys, but there's going to be 28 picks in this first round, according to my mock draft. So, there you go. But Ben King gets a pressure forward who's a genetic freak, and in my opinion, I think more clubs would take it pick 1 if it's the open draft, because a tall forward is harder to find, but he falls in Gold Coast's lap, and, you know, we've got to live with it. Go back-to-back here, as we know. I think they start with Colby McKercher because no one is going to want to trade for that pick, I don't think, or they're less likely to, and I'll explain why when we get to pick 4, but Colby, an extra smooth mover. I understand the comparisons to Zach Merritt. I really do, watching him play. Really good ball user. Could potentially start at halfback, maybe rotate on a wing while they've got LDU, Jai Simpkin, Georgie Wardlaw, Harry Sheasel, Taran Thomas, these guys who, some of those guys can rotate in other spots on the ground as well, don't get me wrong, but that kind of rotation is what he'll have to break into. I believe that he can do that. I'm buying all the Colby McKercher stock I can. I think in 5 years' time, he's going to be the best kid out of this draft. So pick 4, I am sticking with North here. I'm going to talk about trades throughout, but it's not really going to make a difference on my draft board, and I'll explain why as we go through further. But I've got Zane Dersma here to North, but the reason why they don't take him at 3 is because Essendon are going to want to try and trade up for that pick. Could Hawthorn be in love so much with Dersma that they could trade up? Potentially. Could another club try and chime in? I'd love to say a team like Richmond should, but they have nothing to play with at all, the Tigers. But a club like St Kilda could use with Zane Dersma. He and Mateus Philippou would be a really good combination, and they've got some good draft capital. But ultimately, I think it's either Essendon to try to pair him with Xavier, or North keep the pick. I've got North keeping the pick because Zane Dersma is just everything that they need. An athletic centre-forward type who can hit the scoreboard ultra clean and would bring fans in reasonably quickly. Hawthorn fans, I don't know how happy you're going to be with this one, but I've got us taking Daniel Curtin. I did speak with Mark McKenzie, the recruiting manager for Talking Hawks during the week, which was an amazing chat, and he didn't give away what Hawthorn were doing, so I have no insider knowledge on this, but with the Jack Ginnivan acquisition, that can't go under the radar in terms of, do you go get Ginnivan and Nick Watson with the draft capital that you'd be giving up here? You're effectively giving up pick 4 and what we gave up for Ginnivan, dropping a little bit down in the order in order to match points for Will McCabe, and giving up our future second, I think it was a swap there as well, and picking up a 4th from the Pies, which I think was then on-traded, yada, yada, yada. I just don't think the Hawks are going to do that. They need a centre-half back. They bolstered the forward line in the trade period. Gunston, Chol, and Ginnivan. I just don't see them going down the Nick Watson path here. I still think Hawthorn are massively in play for Connor O'Sullivan at this pick. It would not surprise me if in my actual mock draft for November, I've got O'Sullivan in this spot. It would not surprise me at all. Because if the Hawks need a centre-half back, there is an argument to be made that O'Sullivan is the better pick. But Curtin, for the size, the athleticism, and what he can show, fits the Hawks really well at this point, and that's what I'm going with. Bulldogs got two options here, Watson and Sanders. I've actually got them going Riley Sanders here. I think that, yes, the midfield rotation is going to be really difficult for him to break into. I understand that. But I feel like they're going to be able to find small forwards either elsewhere in this draft or in the trade period or later on, sort of in their zone. If Bailey Smith is going to leave, if they do bring in a mid-season trade period and Bailey Smith does go or he goes at the end of the year, etc., etc., McRae gets another year older, Liberatore gets another year older, Adam Treloar gets another year older, get Sanders in there, the kid who averaged pretty much 30 disposals every time he walks out on a football ground, and you're going to be in really good shape. The Doggies, the reason why the Doggies have this pick is so they can get that talent in before the Jordan Croft bid, but also, yes, they didn't play finals last year, the Doggies, but they don't need their first pick to play round one. It is Sanders or Watson for mine. I might flip-flop in the next few weeks, but at this point, I think Sanders actually makes more sense. Pick 7, Melbourne, Nate Caddy is the guy. It just fits everything they need to do. They're going to play petty forward, apparently. Jacob Van Rooyen down there, Tom McDonald, I understand that. I don't think Ben Brown's going to have a massive 2024 at all in terms of games played, but Caddy's ability in the air and on the ground can't go understated. Can be a little bit in and out of games at time, but when you're thinking what can help Melbourne win a final, scoring obviously is going to help them in a big way. Bailey Fritsch can't do it on his own. Van Rooyen another year in. In the next year or two, he is the kind of impact player I could see kicking a couple of late goals in the second half and helping Melbourne win the game, which would be huge. Ultra talented, really smart kid. It's the pick for Melbourne for me. The Giants don't really need to bid on a ruckman here, but if they did end up with Ethan Reid, that would be awesome, but they're not going to. It doesn't matter. Gold Coast are matching the pick anyway. Don't even really know why I brought it up. But Reid, is he the best ruckman in this draft? It looks like it. His combine results would suggest that, and he'll join Ned Moyle and Jared Witts in the Gold Coast ruck room, and I think if you are looking for a ruckman next year as a football club, Ned Moyle is the first name that I would be calling up. Young, really, really good. But Ethan Reid's going to be awesome as well. I think he'll be a really good acquisition for this Gold Coast side. And Dimmer gets another toy to play with. 3 really good options here for the Giants. I've got Nick Watson here going to the Giants. He and Toby Green together is just too tantalising to ignore. I mean, yes, please. Toby Bedford and Brent Daniels were the pressure kind of forwards that can kind of cover for what is perceived to be Nick Watson's weakness defensively. So there's no qualm there. His offensive ability, again, alongside Green, Hogan, Riccardi, these guys, is a net positive for the Giants. They could go down the Darcy Wilson path. They could go down the Caleb Windsor path. I just reckon this Adam Kingsley side, to get some more offensive danger, is going to be amazing for them. And that's why I've got them. They were so close to a grand final. If they can find another couple of goals, who knows? And they'll find it with Watson. Geelong up next. I've kind of cooled on the Connor O'Sullivan to Geelong thing a little bit. So Wilson or Windsor. I've gone Darcy Wilson here for the Cats. I don't know whether he would play round 1 at the Cats, but in terms of a guy that could play 120 minutes, he is the guy. Inside is okay, but on the outside, he looks really, really good. He was the big winner out of the draft combine for mine. His results were amazing, and I think really put his hand up in the eyes of a lot of clubs. And he just feels like a Geelong pick, like those vibes. You put him with Jai Clark and their other youngsters in that midfield/centre forward part of the ground, and the Cats can start to build again on the fly, and they'll be able to add to that mix later on in the draft as well. Essendon, if they didn't do the free agent and trading acquisitions that they got, this would not be the pick. But we're here. Connor O'Sullivan is the guy for the Bombers. Oh, but Daz, they just got Ben Mackay. Yes, Zach Reed's always injured, and there's no one else really. So let's go with that. Now, Mason Redman, I love as a player, but I'm talking about guys that can beat their opponents one-on-one. It is the only downside to Red Dog for mine. His ability to get off his opponent and damage the opposition is so good it nearly outweighs any kind of defensive proficiency, I think. But Essendon were one of the worst teams in the competition for conceding marks inside 50 last year. A lot of that is on midfield pressure, don't get me wrong, but when you're so bad in that stat, You've got the ability to fix it effectively for free twice. Your pick that doesn't move, and Ben Mackay, which you didn't have to give up draft compensation for. So, tick, tick, Bombers are away for mine, and O'Sullivan is a star. Adelaide at 12 in their spot. I think they would be sprinting to the podium to read out Caleb Windsor's name. A guy who can play midfield, go a little bit forward, could start his career at that half-forward spot. His goal sense is that good. He could go to a wing as well. He doesn't need to be in that midfield rotation that will be so dominated by Laird, Dawson, Crouch, potentially Sloan later in games, but I know they want Rankin, Rochelle and Lukey Pedler rolling through there as well. Windsor is another guy you can add to there, and they start to become a more multi-dimensional team. I've got no idea why in the back end of 2023, Adelaide did not put Rankin, Rochelle and Luke Pedler in more centre bounces when it was working for them earlier in the year. They'll know more than I do, so I'm not knocking that club at all, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Adelaide, I think, are going to be a top 4 side next year if they get everything right. They've got a lot right already. They didn't pick up a whole lot in the trade period. Chris Burgess for some depth, but geez, you add Caleb Windsor to that mix, and I'm still sticking to my top 4 prospect. Back to the Ds. They've picked up Caddy. Now they go get James Leake. Harrison Petty's going to go from an intercept defender into the forward line, it looks like, next year, so why not replace him with an intercept defender and the best one in this draft? I have nothing more to say. Melbourne, James Leake. There you go. I think Sydney bid here on Jordan Croft for a couple of reasons. One, if they do end up getting him, that is a net positive. And if the Bulldogs match, that's fine. And Sydney do love bidding on blokes. So, win-win here for everyone. But I think the Bulldogs are going to match the bid. Yes, he'll join one of the most tall sides in the league, of course. But as far as I'm concerned, can you really have too many 200-centimetre plus guys on your list? Probably not. And considering that Jamara and Aaron Norton are settled there in that forward line, Sam Darcy still needs to figure out what's going on. Tim English, as we know, as the All-Australian ruckman, is already set in his spot. Yes, they could go down the defender path. I don't think Jordan Croft is a defender at all. But could he get to a spot where a year, 2 years from now, it's him and Jamara or him and Norton, and they could go find a defender? Absolutely they can. Good set shot technique, nice hands. Jordan Croft looks a really good player. Back to the Swans, and even though they picked up Joel Hamling, I've got them taking Ollie Murphy here for some defensive depth. It's what they need at the moment. Paddy McCartan, unfortunately, having to retire for the concussion reasons, as we know. Yes, again, Hamling, Adams, Grundy, really, really good pickups. They definitely don't need another midfielder at this point, and we'll talk about later on in this mock draft why that is the case. They could go after Archer Reed here. I do think that they are a smoky for him here, but I think Logan McDonald, Hayden McLean, and Joel Amati are going to be the guys that they look at. Okay, and then they go down the Ollie Murphy path down back, who beats his opponents, and a guy who I think is relatively underrated in this draft class. And if you haven't seen my most underrated prospects video, you can absolutely do that. But Murphy to the Swans is one of those picks that just makes a whole lot of sense, and I can't really see changing when we get to November. I think the Saints here bid on Jake Rogers and Gold Coast Accept, who did feature in my underrated prospects video. I like this guy. Yes, he's small, but who cares? Let's focus on what he can control, and that is his footy IQ, his ball sense, and how he uses it. And he tick, tick, tick across the board. Jake Rogers is going to be a very good player. I think he's going to start his career in the forward half of the ground and build into that midfield rotation. Gold Coast have actually built a really good midfield rotation already, but that doesn't mean they're going to pass on this guy, and with his credentials, nor should they. Over to the Saints, and I've got them taking Colton Tholstrop here. I think they need a centre-forward threat. I've talked about it already with a couple of other clubs, but Mateus Filippo was a really good forward threat at times throughout the year, but will develop into a midfielder. Whereas Tholstrup can start his career as a half-forward and pretty much stay there as an offensive threat and then become more of a rotational piece through that St Kilda midfield. They need pace, they need speed. He's got the mullet. He'd bring fans to Marvel Stadium, help create that atmosphere. Really clever around the goals as well. I cannot understate how much I love this fit. Back to the Crows, and I think they're taking another midfielder here. But I'm going the Bull, George Stevens. Doesn't need to play round one. Adelaide are not in a position where they need their draftees to play round one. Now, I can understand if you're thinking the Crows, they really need a key defender in this spot. I understand that. I really do. But the prospect of Stevens at this spot for mine is just too good not to pass up for the Crows. I see him as the next Tom Green. And I think Adelaide right now would love Tom Green in their side. They chased Clayton Oliver. I'm not saying Stevens is going to end up like Oliver with that resume that Clary's got, but you've told us you're chasing that type. That type is going to be there. Are you willing to put the time in and get him into your football club? I'm saying yes. I think North bid on Will McCabe here and Hawthorn do match. He is lightly framed, Big Wilbur, but he'll be a defensive threat. He's got really good hands, nice foot skills, doesn't try to bite off too much, but that aerial presence that he's got is enormous, and he's a guy who looks very, very comfortable with the ball in hand. Kind of the quietest father-son prospect here. I think we all just assumed that McCabe would nominate for the Hawks. He hasn't done it yet, but that's no reason to panic from a Hawthorn point of view at the time of recording. Hopefully it's changed rather quickly. He wasn't a moon boot this year, wasn't overly great at the carnival, but he did get injured, so we will, take that with a grain of salt. But the Hawks, I should say, have got the picks in the 40s in order to match and take another prospect as well. So the Hawks begin this draft with 2 defenders, Curtin and McCabe, which helps balance out the 3 forwards they ended up getting in the trade period. And don't forget about Massimo D'Ambrosio as well, who I think is going to be one of the more underrated pickups in 2024. Back to North. Now, I would genuinely change the order of how they're doing this because of any other side. But because it's North, GWS, North, in the order, GWS don't need a tall forward. They don't need a tall defender. They don't need a small forward. So North could effectively do this in any order they want. Now, if they want to avoid anyone trading up for the Giants pick, they might take a tall first. Okay, but that's not what I'm doing here, so I'm going Lance Collard in this spot. Small forward, damaging player. Get him in that group with Braden George around Larky, Cam Zerha, these guys up forward that can make an impact. And that North forward line is starting to take shape. Paul Curtis is the man that I forgot, who was a bit of a human highlight reel last year, but I thought he did some really nice things defensively as well. If you're upset about the order that North Melbourne take these guys in, look, I kind of get it, but ultimately it's fine. GWS are not going to steal one of their next 2 picks. And speaking of the Giants, they get some speed here with Harry DeMattia. I hope it's Martia. If it's Mattia, I apologise. I've gone back through my previous draft videos. I've actually pronounced it both ways. So to Harry's family, I do apologise because at some point throughout 2023, I've absolutely butchered your last name. But what I do like about this youngster, who was a cricket star throughout his junior years, is his speed, his agility, but also his ability to slow down. So there are players in the competition, and I'm not here to bash AFL players, so I'm not going to name anyone, but there are some players that when I say they run fast but butcher the footy, names are going to come to mind. Or they run fast and don't know what they're doing with it. Names will come to mind. He's saying him. His ability to slow down, stop, be composed, use the ball well is terrific. And I think in that Giant system where they want to get the tsunami going, he is going to be a really good link-up player, whether it's through the midfield, wing, half-back, wherever he may start his career. I think it is a beautiful fit for the guys at GWS. All right, North, you've got a midfield star, a centre-forward star, a small forward. How do we round out your 5 first-round picks? A tall back and a tall forward. Let's start with Ari Schoenmaker, the Tasmanian Devil himself. I love this guy. I really do. I do feel for Ollie Murphy here because I love Connor O'Sullivan. I love Ari Schoenmaker. And it's not that I don't love Ollie Murphy as a player, but he's probably my underrated guy in terms of I love key defenders. I played key defender as a junior. And I think we love players who played our junior positions more than normal. It's like our personal bias, if you will. That's certainly my case with key defenders. It's why Sam Taylor is pretty much my favourite player outside of Hawthorn, not named Zach Butters, but that might be a video for another day. But Schoenmaker beats his opponent. I know he's kind of polarising in terms of where he fits in kind of a power ranking kind of situation, but North need to ignore that. Even though they got Toby Pink, they need to ignore that. Clarko loves drafting talls. Walked into his first preseason and said, give me 2 talls. I don't care. Yes, they ended up being Roughhead and Franklin, which, helps, but he needs to do it here. Whether he does it with Curtin early is too hard to say. In this mock draft, he doesn't. If he does take McKercher and say Curtin and the Hawks end up with Zane Dersma, I am genuinely going to do laps around my house yelling. So good luck to my neighbours. But the way that this mock draft falls and what I think North can do, they get Sean Maker here, who is a very good player, and then they go get Archer Reed. Again, I don't care if you think this is a reach. Some of you might not. But if North can come out of this draft with, in my opinion, the best midfielder in the draft, the best centre forward player in the draft, pure, I'm calling Harley Reid a hybrid of both of these things. Okay, so don't come at me and go, Harley Reid's better than both of them. At this point, yes, he is. But I'm putting him in the midfielder and forward bracket. So he's in a bubble on his own. But pure midfield threat, I'm going Colby. Pure centre forward threat, I'm going Dersma. They then go and get one of the better small forwards in the draft in Lance Collard. They go get one of the better defenders in the draft, and they go get the second best tall forward. If that's not A+ in drafting for what you need, I don't know what is. Love Reid's athleticism, love the way he'll be able to get up the ground, keep Larkey in the goal square. He kicked 70 goals last year, Nick Larkey, with no help. You get him a guy up the ground that can help him out, A+. We can actually get to the reigning premier now, the Pies, and they're going to go with Riley Hardiman. I think some pace out of that back line is going to be nice, but also Collingwood just need to go with who they think is the most talented. And considering this guy's footy IQ and his ball skills, that's him. So there you go. The WA prospect is a really nice kick. I think Collingwood fans would fall in love with him straight away, but they're not going to do a whole lot in this draft. The Pies, they don't need to at all. They picked up Lockie Schultz. Yes, they lost Ginnivan and Taylor Adams, but they've got the depth there. They're the best side in the competition. Go get the best talent. And at this spot, I think Hardiman's that guy. The Crows, for the third time in this go with Chu Giath. The replacement for Tom Duday just makes a whole lot of sense for mine. Rebounding defender, lightning quick. I don't think he's as quick as Chankwath, but I think he's a better ball user. His aerial presence is pretty much the same. And, I mean, Crows fans would fall in love instantly, I think. Not sure if his body's ready for round one. Doesn't need to be. But in terms of you're replacing Duday, I think he is the guy. You've got the perfect spot to do it. Crows walk out of this draft with a midfielder who can play forward and hit the scoreboard, a pure mid, and a rebounding defender. Lovely. We're still in the first round, guys. Work with us. But I think St Kilda bid on Caden Cleary here. One of the best tacklers in the draft, inside mid. Sydney will just stash him away until they're ready and unleash him. They've still got Angus Sheldrick and Matty Roberts, who I'm big fans of, waiting in the wings. But here's an academy prospect. I think they're going to pick him up, see how he goes, stash him away, and go from there. He's had some ridiculous numbers, had some really good VFL numbers against GWS and Gold Coast. And if you remember, Gold Coast did win the VFL Premiership. I think he had 7 clearances in both of those games against those clubs. Had 22 touches against the Giants in the VFL as well. So he can mix it with the big guys and just another Swans gem. Back to the Saints, and I know they've taken a forward threat already, but I think they do it again and go Ashton Moyer in this spot. He's just too talented to keep sliding in this draft, I reckon. Both feet looks really good. I know they've already got Butler and Higgins, but you're adding another dimension into that forward line. And when you add in guys like Membry, Philippou, Tholstrop, we've already talked about. They took Ollie Houghton in last year's draft as well. You're looking at a really solid group here. St Kilda defended really well for the majority of last year, but for crying out loud, they need to score. So whether it's midfield depth that they go for, but I think they can get that from Philippou as he keeps developing and can become an AFL-ready midfielder. So I don't think the Saints need to target it right now, but they need to score. So Tholstrup, Moyer, that's a hell of a start. And to finish the first round, 28 picks. Carlton take Logan Morris. They've got Mackay. They've got Curnow. They've got Motlop. They've got Smalls. Give them the bridge guy. 193 centimetres. I know there's going to be the comparisons to Jack Gunston, and whether that's right or wrong will remain to be seen, but the fit just works. The Blues, I don't suspect that they'll keep their second pick here. I know they traded back in the deal with North, but I do suspect that they might trade a couple of their picks or one of their picks. I don't think it'll be the first one. I think Morris is a really good fit, or if he's already off the board, or they rate someone else higher. I think they're going to take their first selection, but I think they're going to trade their second one. I haven't done it for them in this draft because I just want to give a highlight of the order and, talking about it a little bit here or there. But good goal sense, would fit really well in the Carlton system, and They've already got a pretty damn good-looking midfield, so he'd get good service. Holy smokes. And everyone that's watched one of my drafts before this one knows how much I love Logan Morris. Hey, welcome to the second round. West Coast have got the first pick, and I've got them taking Archie Roberts here. Again, another guy who's kind of forgotten about when it comes to the draft prospects. Can play a little bit of midfield, halfback. Did go to the outside a little bit as well. Good ball user. I think the Eagles here just got to take best talent available, and right now I think that's him. I do believe he's just slipping a little bit under that radar, but I think his leadership qualities and his footy IQ means he's going to be a very clever player, and I think the Eagles need plenty of that. Back to Geelong after the Asava Radaglia trade. I've got them taking Joel Freyer here on the outside, on a wing. He can patrol, do his thing. Isaac Smith, I did not mean for that to rhyme, by the way, but Isaac Smith has retired, so they're going to need a bit of that outside burst. They don't really have a whole lot of it. You know, Sam Menegola was never really that player. Mitch Duncan, when he plays on the wing, obviously not there for his speed, his agility, but Freyer is that kind of player. He's very tall, over 190 centimetres, and a really nice kick. Sure, you're not going to get Smith's breakaway speed, but you're going to get metres gained. You're going to get a very hard matchup, and you're going to get a guy that you could potentially put on either flank as well and become a bit more versatile. We've seen it with Mark Blitzarves. By no means am I suggesting Joel Freyer is going to be the next Mark Blitzarves, but the Cats do like trying guys in different positions, and I think he'll be able to adjust to that. He'll start as a wingman in his AFL career, and where he develops from there will be really interesting to see. But in the last two drafts, you're giving Jai Clark, you're giving Joel Freyer, and you're giving Darcy Wilson. Cats fans have got a lot to be happy about, apart from, obviously, the flag in 2022. Back to Carlton. I don't really expect them to keep this pick, but if they do, I think Luamon Lual is going to be the man they go for. Again, if I've mispronounced, I do apologise. I do try my best with these pronunciations, but also going back through highlights, full games, even commentators, different commentators are giving different pronunciations. So I am doing my best here, but I think the Blues could look at a little bit of defense here. Again, this isn't for the now, guys. It's not like, oh, he's going to come in now, playing a prelim with the Blues or whatever. We're talking 2-3 years from now, because Carlton are a good team. They don't need to play round one. But getting this guy under Michael Voss's system would be really good. He's got the athleticism that you expect. He's got some breakaway speed. But what I really like about watching him is when he gets the ball, you as a fan, just watching him, you don't panic. He doesn't panic. You don't panic. And I think Carlton fans deserve that a little bit after some defenders they've had in recent years that when they get the footy, they go through stages of, oh no. He wouldn't do that. Speaking of teams that need to score next year, Richmond do, and I think Cohen Sanchez is going to help them do that. Yes, they've got some small forwards, I know, but considering Shea Bolton and Dustin Martin are only going to rotate midfield half forward next year, underneath Tom Lynch's feet, I really don't have a whole lot of faith in what's there. I like Sanchez's cleverness. I like the fact he can hit the scoreboard. And I think what Adam Uze is going to enjoy as well is that he does stick his tackles from what I've seen. So I think he'd be a really good fit for the Tigers. I think they would love Logan Morris in this spot, but he's not there in this mock draft. And it's not that Sanchez is just the next best option. As this draft goes, he would be a very good fit for the Tigers. Brisbane. No one is buying Mitch Edwards stock to Brisbane more than I am. I know they've just got rid of Tom Fullerton, which helps in that way. I know they've still got Darcy Fort there, and Oscar McInerney doesn't really seem like a guy you could play a second ruckman with. But again, we're looking at 3 to 4 years from now. Ruckman take a while. And Mitch Edwards has the raw talent that in 3-4 years from now, who knows? Darcy Fort's not going to be there in 3 or 4 years. You need to have guys on your depth chart. Their midfield is fine. Their backline is fine. Their forward line is fine. They were 4 points off a flag. Pointing out detrimental flaws, in my opinion, is relatively stupid. So take the best talent available. That is Mitch Edwards in this spot. And I think in 3 or 4 years, Brisbane will be absolutely laughing that he slid this far. Back to the Bombers. They've just delisted a couple of forwards, so I think they need another one. And I think Phoenix Gothard here is a guy that they'll be able to look at, who, when you compare to kind of his power rankings, is slipping a little bit, but that's to be expected. I look at a guy like Arlo Draper, who was, I think, 15th in Cal Toomey's Phantom Guide in his draft year, went in the 40s, and unfortunately we didn't see him play, and he's just been delisted. So, you know, power rankings for mine, take it as they come. I've got some guys that are higher, some that are lower. The comparisons, I see it a little bit in my comment section, unnecessary. Gothard is a very clever player. I think the Bombers need to find more ways to score. I worry about their ability to do it in the air. I don't think there is a guy they can take here that is going to help them all that much in the air, so let's reinforce on the ground, and Gothard would do that. Back to the Pies, and I think they go with Will Green in this spot. I don't see how you couldn't. Darcy Cameron's not old, but Mason Cox is on the last year of his deal. Aiden Begg, we haven't really seen a whole lot of, and Green's assets and his ability is unbelievable at this point in time. We could have a really good ruck draft class here, but not a lot of teams need ruckmen. So in 3 or 4 years from now, we might know how good this ruck draft class was. But considering Port Adelaide and Sydney stocked up on their ruckmen, no one's really playing two genuine ruckmen outside of Freo at the moment. West Coast could next year with Matt Flynn and Bailey Williams, but both relatively young now. I know Darcy and Jackson are as well, but no real other clubs are doing it at the moment. Port Adelaide might with Soldo and Sweet, but how the hell that's going to work, I've got no idea. Collingwood can stash Will Green away, and when Mason Cox retires, Darcy Cameron's already shown he can play forward. Perfect. Freo joined the draft for the first time here, and they go with Jack DeLeon, the small forward from South Australia. They lost Lockie Schultz in the trade period, and I think they still need that offensive spark, and he is the best small forward left on this board, in my opinion. I like the way this guy goes about it. He's no frills, no fuss, which kind of is like Lockie Schultz in a way. Really crafty around the goals. Freo have just got to take best talent available, and considering that DeLeon does have that, and he's also a need that Freo have got, makes it a good match here for mine. Back to the Bombers, and I actually suspect that they won't keep this pick. I actually do not believe that Essendon will keep this pick if the draft goes relatively similar to what I've got here. But I'm going to go with Charlie Edwards here. I think best talent available is going to be key for the Bombers here. Charlie is looking like a really good player. I know they've got plenty of midfield depth, the Bombers do, but considering there's only going to be about 55 guys drafted this year, if you've got pick 37, best talent available is what you're going to do. And considering they've taken a small forward already in this draft, they've already taken a key defender. In terms of your best 22 holes, there's not a lot there. They need to go out and prove it, and I don't think Essendon are going to be a top 4 team this year. But knowing what their best 22 looks like is going to be key. So getting another guy for depth is going to be a good thing, and I don't suspect that midfield group is going to look the same even 2-3 years from now. So you're able to get a really smart midfielder in, which is what Charlie Edwards is, and that's a win for the Bombers for mine. Zane Zakostelski is the man for the Eagles in this spot, and that only took me about 8 goes to get right. So fingers crossed it is right, first of all, but the rawness, the height, I think they're all things that work in this young man's favour. Ruck, key position player. They're not going to need him in the ruck. Key position is what they need at the moment. McGovern, yes, getting older. I know he's still got plenty of good footy left in him, but Jack Darling getting a little bit older as well, getting a key position player in this spot is going to be good for the Eagles. You walk out of the draft with Reed, Archie Roberts, and this young man. I think they're in a really, really good spot. Really like what I've seen in the back end, probably the last month or two, and I'm really happy I get to see him in this draft. Brisbane, another side that I can't really see keeping this pick at this point, but rules are rules. Let's go with a player. Best available, I think they go with Cooper Simpson. They have been delisting their sort of outside players. I know Kitty Coleman's brother and Darryl White's son did get delisted, but I think Simpson's footy IQ is good enough to get him into that Brisbane side at some point. I don't think it will be in 2024. Considering Levi Ashcroft is coming in as well, I can understand if you think this is unlikely, but Brisbane have just got to go with best talent available, see what they've got. I think Cooper Simpson is that. A really clever player and a guy who started the year really, really well. You know, did his thing throughout the middle of the year. I think he got an injury or two as well. And I really liked the last couple of times I've seen him as well. So in terms of talent available, I'm going that. I think Brisbane would have drafted Will Patton in this spot if they didn't get Duday, though. And St Kilda here, I think they need a bit of height. I'm going with Will Dawson. Now, I don't think they need height with Marshall. I don't think they need height with King Membry in that part of the ground. Can he become a key defender? Who knows? But more height on your list is not going to be a bad thing. They're keeping Tom Campbell. So I think Will Dawson at this spot is good. He's raw, he's young, he's athletic. His combine scores were reasonably good as well, and I think the Saints here take a bit of a swing, and fingers crossed for them, it's a home run. I've really liked what I've seen from Dawson. If I was doing like a stock market, if you will, I think Dawson's stock is definitely on the rise. He might not even be in the draft at this pick, but Who knows? But that is my top 40, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it in a big, big way. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. I am aiming for 2,200 before draft day. If we can get it done, that would be genuinely mind-blowing. I hope you're having a fantastic week. Sunday, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I am going live to answer your draft questions. You'll be jumping on with me, asking me your big draft questions. I'll be getting them answered. I'll be going into the comments as well. It's going to be a fantastic time for about 45 minutes. So come and join me on Sunday night. I'll see you very soon. Can't wait for the draft Q&A. Goodbye.